What does it really take to make data governance a true business enabler and then strategic by its true nature?
Oh boy. How many hours do we have?
Take as much time you want. Yeah.
2 words, non-invasive. It needs to be non-invasive to the extent it needs to be invisible. That's the ideal sort of reality that data governance needs to see in practice.
Hello and welcome. In our last episode, we discussed the need to rethink approach to data strategy. In today's episode, we are going to discuss the need to rethink data governance, as that has become a very strategic imperative in Middle East region. My name is Bharat. I'm the CEO for a niche and boutique all-in data consulting company. And with me today, I have Gautam, who is an expert in data governance field. Gautam, how about we kickstart this discussion with your introductions?
Thank you, Bharat. Very nice to be on the podcast. Very nice to have your audience as well. So my name is Gautam Verma, and I started off quite a few years back as a data scientist, long before it became the fanciest job in the world. And I had the honor of working with retail e-commerce companies on some very specific, pertinent problem statements around realizing value from data. So we used to do a lot of predictive analytics work in terms of predicting customers, purchase propensity. With the manufacturing clients, we used to predict when equipments are going to fail. So very cutting edge work
Yep.
in the space of data and analytics. But when I was doing that, there was some itch which was not satisfied, right? And that was around the business impact. And where I'm going with this is, the data insights which predictive analytics gives you needs to be taken further to the last mile. That is the business impact. That is the business decision. And I used to see that a lot of these clients, be it e-commerce, be it manufacturing, they used to struggle with taking that final last mile business decision from the data derived insights. And that's when I became very appreciative of the foundational capabilities such as data governance, data quality, having the right metadata, supporting decisioning, etc., etc. And that's when I transitioned into the royal worlds of data governance and everything around data management in general.
Yep.
So the last decade, I've consulted businesses, both government as well as private sector, in the space of data governance. And how do you build those foundational capabilities to derive the value? And that's the journey panned out.
Thanks for those introductions. Gautam, these are exciting times to be present in the Middle East. If you look around across different countries, the vibe is electric. Take Saudi Arabia, take Qatar, Oman, and of course, UAE is leading the way. And the common theme across these initiatives is AI. And the question really comes is, what does it take to support such ambition, which is very transformative in nature and unprecedented speed and scale? So what does it take to really support that kind of a growth?
I like that we are starting at the 30,000,
Yes.
the helicopter view.
Yes.
And you're spot on. I mean, the vision that you see in this region is second to none. You compare it to UK or to US, where these transformations are very, very specific to certain agencies that exist across the landscape. Over here, you have a lot of nation and national strategy driven transformations, which are second to none.
Yeah.
Now, given that the ambitions are bold, the visions are, extraordinary, it requires, backing these ambitions with appreciation of the fact that we are dealing with a bouquet of different enterprises which are at different maturity levels.
Mhm.
And just that acknowledgement that when you're talking about national transformations, you're not dealing with a monolith,
Mhm.
which is, one solution fits all, but uh, different customized, bespoke, different maturity level departments which are facing challenges very unique to their space. Just that appreciation in itself
Mhm.
is a mammoth achievement. Once you've had that acknowledgement, you need to back it up with grassroots foundational capability building initiatives addressing these different maturity
Mhm.
levels. Because we talk about, be it the Saudi Vision 2030
Mhm.
or UAE's ambitions, in becoming smart government
Mhm.
of the future. um, all of these require transformations that can last for coming decades, and for that to happen, investing in those foundational capabilities, and hats off to the leadership
Mhm.
of this region that invests in those foundational capabilities. So that's what I'd say, is the
Yeah.
key.
And I think there are two themes which are coming up, right? One is, as you said, the appreciation, the fact that the this scale is so big that the maturity levels are going to be different at different pockets.
Mm,
And the second is on a grassroots level, uh, spelling out those areas where it requires work,
mm,
and data is one of those aspects, right?
mm,
And if we all agree that data is one of those foundational layers,
mm,
uh, the question is, at what point does it become clear that to build that trusted, secure data foundation,
mm,
you need data governance?
mm,
And the reason I ask you this question is, we see a lot of clients are busy solving data problems with tools, storage, financial analytics, and they don't go anywhere with that. What do you think of that?
No, spot on. I think that's where, starting from what does the CEO care about? What does the leadership care about in terms of those key business objectives? Whether it is some regulatory compliance related obligation, or an existential threat from a competition that's, rapidly making paces and progressing with technology adoption.
Hmm.
Um, I'm moving towards whether there is a defensive need or an offensive need, which a business sees at the highest realm, at the highest level.
Hmm.
That needs to be the trigger.
Interesting, but that almost makes me wonder, uh, how did the concept of data governance
Hmm.
really come about? What was the purpose of it? What was it intended to solve as a problem? And is it still contextual? Is it still relevant, or has it changed?
Yeah, yeah. So now we're talking existential question about data governance
It
itself.
is. It is. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a brilliant, journey down the memory
Yeah.
lane, the history lane in terms of where did this all
Yeah.
begin. And I think your audience will also be um, um, surprised, delighted. I'm not sure. We'll let them decide which camp they belong to. But data governance, when it started off primarily to serve IT function,
Hmm.
um, and which is a paradigm shift from where it is today, where
Mhm.
it's a given that it's supposed to be part of business function, right? But the origin story is actually more around supporting the IT function, the basement level, the ground floor level work which used to happen on relational databases and just managing the data that relational tables and relational
Yeah.
databases used to have. And from those humble beginnings of making sure the databases are on the point, with the 2000, the Y2K, and the whole big data explosion that's happened after that,
Yeah.
businesses needed to manage the data which was being generated. You had the volume, you had the variety and the veracity of the data that needed to be of good quality, so that your data driven decisions are on the point. Data governance transitioned just at that cusp from being an IT
Hmm.
driven function to a business driven function, right? And right around that time, 2000 ish, is when the infamous Enron scandal
Hmm.
unraveled as well, right? As an aftermath of it, we had Sarbanes Oxley Act. I'm very sure you
Yeah.
seen that as well. SOX was one of the earliest case studies of data governance aligned specifically to business need, which was to get your financial reporting in order,
Hmm.
to ensure that the investors are safeguarded, right? So from that transition, from being an IT driven function to a business driven function, to today, where it's a strategic imperative, right? Where data has been acknowledged as a strategic asset, and data governance by default is driving these strategic decisions, right? That's the journey that it's transpired over the last 50 odd years.
It's it's very interesting, and for me, it's one of the aha moments, right? And I say that because while today we say data has become that strategic, initiative, and we want to drive business value out of data, I still believe and I still see that a lot of organizations are approaching data governance more from the compliance perspective. And
Mm,
now the aha moment is that it's clear because that's how data governance really started.
indeed, indeed. Yeah.
So organizations are definitely trying to make that pivot
Hmm.
uh, to more business outcome driven data governance.
Yeah, and it also depends on which sector, which
Yeah.
industry you belong to. It's a known fact that financial industries are more heavily regulated, whereas gaming industries are relatively lesser, regulated, which obviously seeps into your business strategy, and by default into your data strategy as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, there are so many flavors
Yeah.
to this. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm wanting to jump into this discussion about compliance driven and more business driven, but
Mm,
we'll park it for a minute.
mm,
What I want to ask you is, you work for governments, you worked for large enterprises, and championing data governance story in those organizations. What truly comes between, I would say, ambition and execution?
mm.
Right, and the follow-up of that is, when you realize that, how have you managed to pivot? What have you changed so that you can still be successful?
Mm. Yeah, it's fascinating, and especially when you compare it with what's how this world has evolved over the years. I'll start off by saying that the world in which we are, especially this part of the world, in GCC in particular, um, businesses are a lot more proactive when it comes to implementing governance
Hmm.
and implementing data management practices, which is contradictory to, and somewhat unique when you compare it to Western world, right? Where you see a lot more reactive data management. Your conventional frameworks. They are a lot more reactive in terms of regulatory, in terms of uh, reacting to an external competition, etc., etc. Case in point,
Hmm.
in this region, businesses started adopting GDPR as the de facto gold standard,
Yep.
even when it was not mandatory, right? And that's not a unique scenario. Along with that, other regulations were proactively
Hmm.
adopted with the intention of innovation being the center stage, taking the center stage, rather than compliance taking the center stage, right? And that's a very unique
Hmm.
differentiator between, how do you build yourself to, in a defensive strategy, or how do you build yourself for an offensive strategy? So that's something which stands apart in this region.
Yeah, no, absolutely, it does. And I mean, I'm bringing it back to saying that today you see most of the organizations are talking about data governance. You see that in the presentations, you see that in fancy policy documents. But what does that truly mean in terms of its practice?
Mm,
Uh, what does it really take to make data governance a true business enabler
mm.
and then strategic by its true nature? Uh,
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
two words: non-invasive. um, it needs to be non-invasive, to the extent it needs to be invisible. That's the ideal sort of reality that data governance needs to see in practice. We would all agree, right? Drafting policies and standards is a very good first point, is
Hmm.
a very good starting point, and it's indicative of the maturity level as well of the business. But the way data governance should manifest itself is actually by not manifesting itself, right?
What do you mean?
Yeah. So it should be embedded in the pedigree of the business, in the culture of the business, in the way people conduct themselves on a day to day basis. If I've received a document in my SharePoint drive, I'll give a simple example. I, by default, as an employee, should know whether that going through it, whether that is a confidential document or a sensitive document or a secretive document,
Hmm.
and be able to classify that document appropriately without going through a specific policy document on data classification. You see, so where I'm going with this is data governance should manifest itself in the way the culture of a business conducts itself.
And now you bring up another exciting topic, culture, right? It's ironic because I was just reading one latest survey report and it says number one barrier for data governance adoption is company culture.
Surprise, surprise.
But then to me, I mean, culture is such a vague term.
Mm,
And help me understand, right? The company culture is at different levels. So are we saying that at the top of the organization, data governance is not taken seriously? Is one of the aspects, or is it that the middle management is more territorial about their own departmental data for various reasons, or is it something else? So
mm.
how do you see that term culture as the barrier?
Oh boy. How many hours do we have?
Take as much time you want.
No, it's a fascinating topic. You've said it right at the start. It's fuzzy. Culture as a term is not as clearly frameworked as a lot of other data domains. But that's where and I'm super passionate about this particular aspect, primarily because it's the most elusive piece of the puzzle.
Mhm.
And the way I'd answer your question is it's at a bit of both. um, Needless to say, it needs to be driven all the way from the top. The CEO, the leader, the executives at the top need to appreciate the importance of doing this,
Mhm.
but that needs to crystallize at the management level, at the middle layer as well. And that's where, and I've built a framework which addresses exactly this for enterprises both private sector and public sector. And the way the framework is structured is addressing this culture piece through three different fears.
Okay.
And this applies to all different sectors. Anyone who's resisting a transformation, um, technology, digital, data, AI, you know, is doing it
Mm-hmm.
primarily for one of the three reasons, or one of the three fears. It could be the fear of unknown.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand what data and AI,
Yeah.
is going to be, and
You don't know what you don't know, and you're afraid
exactly,
of that. Yeah.
because I'm sitting and hiding my face under a rock and
Yeah.
pretending that it's 1500s, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to step out of it. So fear of the unknown. The second is fear of automation. I'm scared that what is actually coming will make me obsolete, make me redundant. Because I don't want to be redundant,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stay clear of
Mm-hmm.
that, right? I'm going to try to stay away as long as I can. The third, possibly the most debatable and the most prominent one, is the fear of being exposed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I've got skeletons hidden in my closet, and I don't want any technology or data or AI coming through to actually expose those skeletons from my closet. Right? The way we address these
Mm-hmm.
three fears is through two separate streams. The first is by building the right skill set, which is having the foundational awareness and capability, addressing the transformation that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
The second is the mindset. Building the capability is not the end in itself, it's just a means to an end.
Mm-hmm.
And it's phenomenal, how sporadic and how prominent this is, where businesses see this capability building as an end in itself, right? Which is definitely not the right approach. um, the mindset space of my framework is where we build community of practitioners who are sort of those early adopters, the believers, who let me ask you a question. uh, are you an iPhone user?
I am.
Okay. Are you one of those iPhone users who would queue up
No, I'm not.
outside an Apple store,
No, I'm not. I would
days,
wait.
night, you'd wait?
I
Okay.
would wait. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But I'm sure you've seen and heard of those people who queue up outside an Apple store the night before a new version is
Absolutely.
being launched, right?
Yeah.
Now you can debate why would they do that and why do they do that, right? The simple answer is they believe in that cause to that level that they want to show their solidarity
Mm-hmm.
by literally investing time, effort, money in just that cause, in just that
Mm-hmm.
brand, right? In my framework, in these community of practitioners, we are looking for those champions, those early adopters who are strong believers in the transformation and can be spreading the word across their different departments, their different businesses, their different streams, to make this a change affecting and influencing the entire 100%. Because you'd agree, Bharat, that a transformation is not done by just influencing the 5% data and AI practitioners. They anyway are the believers, largely speaking. The transformation is a success when the remaining 95% become
Mm-hmm.
believers, right? And that's where, in my framework, through the mindset stream, we address these non-believers and bring them, to the other side, the bright side, not the dark side, of transformation, and essentially bring a success in the transformation.
And clearly, you're one of those passionate people who would truly want to drive this data governance agenda, and that's fantastic. We are unfolding a lot of things here, right? We touched upon the origin of data governance. And as I said, I had a bit of aha moment there. No surprise now that why that pivot really takes time to move it from the compliance driven to business driven uh, approach.
Mm.
That is one aspect of it. And then you talked about the culture, and that is such a huge one. And it's interesting to see that you come up with your own framework to address that part alone. Uh, because I don't see that often that any framework really supports that aspect.
Yeah, we don't have a standard framework which addresses how do you drive data culture or
Yeah,
AI culture within
yeah,
businesses. You're right.
exactly. So this is very interesting, and then that kind of leads to the next topic, right?
Just
Yeah,
on that point, now the key message which I'd like to give the audience is let this be a critical input into the data governance framework that is created, is developed within businesses,
yeah,
which is to let the people element, the people aspect, be a critical part of your data governance framework.
yeah,
Only then are you making the data governance practical,
yeah,
tangible, and realistic for the
yeah.
business. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. Is uh, we also talked about the frameworks coming from the West are
Mm,
more compliance driven,
mm.
and if you take our region, Middle East region, wants to truly drive data governance initiative as part of that whole transformation journey,
Mm.
wants to make it part of that roadmap. Uh, and maybe that is where you see that misfit of some of the frameworks used to contain that ambition, and that's never going to work.
Mm.
And that means that you need a different approach, different framework
I
for
fully
this
agree.
region.
I fully agree. I think it's important that you localize these as best as possible based on the culture, the sensibilities, and the ambitions of this region. And I am a strong advocate that because the ambitions of this region are second to none, it is important that the um, you'd want last thing that you'd want to slow down on that ambition are your foundational capabilities such as data governance.
Yeah.
So you don't want governance to slow down this speed of this Ferrari, but you'd want the governance to actually make this Ferrari go even faster.
Yeah.
The only way you can do that is by making it less heavy on the compliance, but more heavy on the innovation, on the value realization. Let's make it absolutely tangible
Hmm.
for the people, right? What I mean by that is, let's take maturity assessments for instance, right? You when done, maturity assessments should not have majority assessment questions based on whether you're compliant on certain practices and policies and standards and controls and so on and so forth,
Yep.
but more on whether you are building your guardrails to do innovation, to adopt AI, to do it ethically, to do it responsibly, right? So light on the compliance, heavy
Yeah.
on innovation.
Yeah.
That's how the localized data governance framework should be. That's the recipe of success given the ambitions of this
Yeah.
region. Yeah.
And does that your framework support?
100%. And which is where, the guardrails are primarily centric around responsible AI, ethical AI, because that's only way of making your agentic AI solutions and any technology solution enterprise grade and take them out of a proof of concept,
Mhm.
a pilot, and actually successfully roll it out for the whole business.
Yeah. Oh, very interesting. Let's shift gears a little bit more on the operational rhythm side of things, right? Where the chaos
Mhm.
and the real drama unfolds, right? And let's make it more contextual to this region,
Mm.
where national level AI initiatives have mandates, deadlines, smart cities are coming up,
Mm.
and the data leaders of this region are handling dozens of such initiatives at once, which requires data governance, has AI embedded in those initiatives. And when everything is screaming attention, how do you prioritize data governance? How do you even prioritize investments in data governance?
Mm.
What comes first? And I'll make it more interesting, right? And this is something I'm sure you have seen it. Uh, Organizations would tell you that, hey, I have 90 days to
Mhm.
make data governance work.
TikTok.
How do you do it?
No, fascinating. Yeah, it's yeah, and every single day counts when you're in a situation like this, where you're expected to realize value and demonstrate value quickly. It's every day counts. There are so many thoughts. Let me start off by most importantly highlighting the fact that it should not be a bottom up approach. It definitely needs to be a top down. What I mean by that is I would pick up the most important thing that a CEO or the head of that enterprise cares about.
Mhm.
Insider secret, executive reports are the go to place to start with, right?
It's
I'm
so
very sure.
mind-boggling, right? It still happens. It's crazy.
We've all grayed our hair,
Uh-huh.
and it still remains the most important piece of of the executive mind share.
Yeah.
We've all been in that environment where the question, the dreaded question, is asked: Do you trust the report?
Yeah.
And you, there is an awkward silence, and that's primarily because the trust in the information that's being presented is missing. And that's a brilliant starting point
Mhm.
in doing data governance, because that's the first and the most important thing the leader cares about. So given the time limit, 90 days or 30 days, hopefully not 30 days, but 90 days, I'd start with one most important thing, and just create a bounding box around it
Mhm.
in terms of the data supporting that problem statement or use case. If it's executive report, the single source of truth, existence or non-existence, and addressing it is what I would start with.
Mm.
Along with that, the most important thing is to invest as early as possible in building the grassroots capabilities. Needless to say, technology should be the last thing that should be started with. It should not even feature in the 90-day plan
Mhm.
if not needed. I would invest in making sure that the capabilities are built organically or inorganically within the business to be able to sustain over a longer period of time, all with the eye on realizing a quick win, a short term win success within these 90 days to make sure the buy in of the leadership stays intact and takes us
Mm.
through on the multi year strategy.
Yeah, to that point, what we see, we get called by customers, clients, in one of these scenarios, right?
Mm.
One scenario is, hey, audits are coming up, or
Mm.
we just failed the audit miserably.
Mm.
And from a compliance perspective, we need to do something about it, and we have very limited time. Or then it is a departmental initiative where they need data quality to be fixed for certain data set, and that's
Mm.
how they want to now embark on this whole
Mm.
data quality journey.
Mm.
But what we realize this is still a problem, because it is still not hinging, it is still not tied to any particular business driver,
Mm.
which is coming from the top.
And a lot
And
of times, yeah, a lot of times that happens because those business objectives aren't the most clear. Um,
Yeah.
Business strategy isn't the most visible. I mean, I've worked with clients where the mission, vision, and the strategies are drafted on placards and are visible throughout the campus, with the objective that every single person working within that business is made aware of what is the North Star that we are working towards,
Yep.
right? In that case, brilliant. People, everyone on the ground is aware of what we are doing and why we are doing what we are doing, right? The
Mm-hmm.
why is the more difficult
Mm-hmm.
piece. But then that's not the case everywhere, right? And you still meet businesses where those business objectives are not very obvious, which is what makes it difficult, to your point,
Yep.
to hinge your
Yep.
data governance and data management initiatives to a bigger piece.
Yep.
It's not the most easiest thing. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not. Absolutely. Yeah. So let me uh, paint a scenario, and I think that would be a nice way of bringing this discussion to somewhat close from this context perspective. Is let's say two organizations, right? 26, they're embarking on data governance journey. Uh, it could be banks, it could be telecom company, or it could be organization from energy sector. Let's take banks,
Mm,
right? Two banks starting this journey at the same time.
mm,
The first organization, first bank, takes on this initiative as a transformative roadmap, a proactive approach, something to enable the business,
mm,
right? And the second organization takes on this journey more from a compliance perspective
mm,
and does the bare minimum to get going. Let's fast forward 3 years from now.
mm,
We are in 29. What will be the visible difference between these two organizations? Uh, what is that organization number one who took that proactive approach can do, which the organization number two who took the compliance approach can't do?
mm,
And where I'm going with that is I really want you to spell out what is it at stake,
mm,
uh, and why this pivot to the business is very important.
mm. I like this. I like this. David versus Goliath.
Some sort, yes.
No, and it's conversations coming full circle, right?
Yeah.
Because that's exactly where we started off as well. Look, a lot is dictated by the industry, the sector, the environment, the surroundings that you're operating in, but largely speaking, it is all about value realization and being able to sort of derive the expected outcomes from the data and AI implementations that the business is actually embarking on. Um, in one case, if you're doing, I'll take Goliath first. If the approach has been a linear regulatory compliance, make sure that we don't derail ourselves, you'd see linear improvement,
Yeah.
you'd see linear value being realized with incremental improvements, and that might just be fine for you.
Mhm.
But if the environment in which you operate expects disruption, expects you to be able to outdo the competition, which is taking rapid strides, and you want a competitive advantage, then having a proactive approach, which is the David over here,
Mhm.
of having a innovation driven data governance implementation is the only way that your business can survive, right? What I'm trying to highlight over here is that you need to see this data governance, data management in general,
Mhm.
as a strategic advantage rather than an obligation from a business standpoint. Only if you build, and I'd like to give, since you mentioned banks,
Mhm.
I'd give an example of a classic case study where JP Morgan, one of the biggest banks in the US, actually has been a champion in forward planning its data journey, to the extent where today it can adopt technologies such as blockchain, which it has
Mhm.
through its platform, and build its own private blockchain driven financial environment to transact more than 5 million, if I'm not mistaken, transactions in a year, all through its private blockchain driven network. And at the same time, without naming names, you'd have banks which can only dream of doing something like this, right?
So true.
Now, how was JP Morgan able to do this? Only because it had that solid foundation,
Mhm.
which was data management done right, data quality done right, and data being governed in order to ensure that what you're building on top of this from a value realization standpoint is sustainable and is an enterprise grade solution, right? So, to summarize,
Yeah.
you'd be able to transition from a defensive strategy to an offensive strategy and realize value from the AI and other technology driven solutions at an enterprise scale if you build with this proactive approach.
So proactive approach is the way to go.
Is the right way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think very nicely explained and summarized. That kind of brings us to the end of this discussion. I truly enjoyed this discussion, and I really hope that our audience also got some golden nuggets from this discussion. Once again, thanks a lot, Gautam.
Thank you, Bharat. Thank you for having me. And it was a delight to meet your audience as well.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to seeing you again.